Let's see. Yeah, it's recording. Welcome to a short demo on the PortalBases plugin, as well as a tutorial on how to set it up. It's pretty straightforward. Once you've loaded your server with the PortalBases plugin and the dependency being a word edit, you should have a folder called PortalBase with the config.yml and a base folder. Now, quickly, the base folder, this is where all the data will be stored, so all the player bases and your default schematics, and what that means I'll go over in a second. We have a config.yml, and in the config.yml we have something called a campsite, and then we have some variables for it. We have bedrock, we have the block type, which in this case is bedrock. We have something called the default schematic, and then we have something called dimensions from Origo. Now, if we start off what I mean by the block type, so just spawn a campsite or a player base, as I call them. The plugin looks for a specific block, and in this case, by default, look for bedrock. You can change any valid block, so it could be white wool. White wool, for instance, and it would look for all blocks that are white wool. And if you place a white wool block, you'll spawn your base. Now, if you enter an invalid block name, so like white wool, something like that, it will revert to the default block type, which is bedrock. And default schematic is, I'll show you pretty much what default schematic in a second is, and then I'll also show you what this variable means from Origo, dimension dot from Origo. So if we join the server, this is a brand new install of the plugin. So we have nothing in the base data folder. And remember, by default, a block type is bedrock. So if I try to place down a bedrock block right now, you can see here it can't find base schematic nor default schematic. So it's essentially, well, there's nothing to load. The player has nothing. So we need to create a default schematic. And now you should think about schematics as 3D cubes, cuboids, so to speak, with a center point somewhere. So if I say, if we just say, if we say this is my middle, this is my center point of my cuboid, right? This is my center, if that makes sense. And say we want our player base to be 5 times 5 times 5. So it's essentially has a volume of 125. I hope my math is right. I haven't had any sleep. So to do that, we have to be at our zone center point. Say this is the zone, and say we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we go 5 this way, and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'll tell you why we specifically do 5 in a second. And now if we do the opposite, so if this changes our z coordinates, as you can see, in the positive direction, then this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then our x, if this is positive, we'll want to go to opposite in that way, obviously. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then since we already went 5 blocks up, we want to go down 5 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, 5. Okay, it might have been bad of me to place the blocks down here. But so essentially, what this variable from Origo means, it essentially means if we have a schematic, we're going to make a schematic with a center point in this block. The plugin will create a cuboid centered on this block right here. 5 steps in that direction, 5 steps in that direction, 5 steps that direction. That will be our minimum corner, so to speak. And then we'll do the same. We'll have a symmetric, a mirrored version. So we'll go 5 blocks in the opposite direction, 5 blocks in the opposite direction again, and then 5 blocks up. And that's why we have 5 blocks. If this was 10, we'd have a larger cube. We'd have, instead of just being 5 in that direction, in the z direction, we'd have 10 blocks in the z direction, 10 blocks in the x direction, and blocks up in the y direction, and then we just mirror it to the opposite side. That's what from Origo means. It essentially just gives the sides of our cuboid from it will give us the size of our cuboid with respect to our center point being this little stone. Now, to create a default schematic, we need to select our cuboid that we just made. So select that block all the way to there. Now, word edit will create a schematic for us that contains all blocks from over there all the way up there. So it will also include the dirt and grass. So it's just for now we're gonna use schematic. Sorry, I can't spell today. Schematic save, and then by default we want it to be called test schematic. You can always change it, so I'll change it for tutorial. Sorry, I need to copy it first. Copy. We have created a schematic called tutorial. We can just paste it in to get a look at. This is what our player base will look like. Of course, you can always make this more prettier, but essentially, when the player spawns, the player base, any changes within this cuboid will be saved. Now that our word edit file, word edit schematic file is saved, we need to go to word edit. We need to go to the schematic folder, and then we need to pick the full schematic file that we just had. So for me, it's tutorial.schem. Then we go back to our PortalBase bases, and then we paste it in here. This is our default schematic. So if I copy the name, and then we can go back to our settings, we change the name instead of it just being test.schematics, change it into tutorial.schematics. Now, this plugin is safe as far as I've tested. It should be safe to just reload it. So we can reload it. Doesn't have a built-in reload command yet. I could really easily make it, but for now, I just do /reload. Reload all server. And let's just wait for it to complete. Okay, there we go. And if we've done everything right, place a block. And look at that. Now we have a player zone saved. As you can see, what happens is it will essentially take out our cuboid of 5 times 5 times 5, and it will remove everything in that volume and replace it with our schematic. And if we now break our center block, if we break the block, the camping block, which again in our case is specified as bedrock, if we break it, the nature will be reverted back to its usual place. So we can place it again. We'll be reverted. Sorry, our base will be spawned. Break it, we'll revert it. So if we now build anything, like say like this, right? And we remove our camping block, all the edits will be gone. It will be reverted back to its natural position, and we can place the block again. And we can see the changes that we've done to our base has been saved. Now, the function to save file storage and just make it more manageable in the amount of files, it's so that when you leave the server, when the play disconnects, or when the server shuts down or reloads, all player bases will be despawned and the natural environment will be restored. As you can see, our changes are gone, the natural environment returns it back to its usual. But what happens is that if we go back to our base folder, we'll see a new schematic file with a long string, and this string is the UID of the player. So even if the player changes name, the plugin will still work for them. What this means is that now, if I rejoined and I have a personal schematic file, I've already made a base before. Even though I disconnected, I can respawn it exactly as it was, and I can just make changes however I'd like to. Yeah, this is essentially how the plugin works. Let me show you what happens when you reload. When you reload plugin while a player base is out, if for some instance players are minding their own business and you decide to reload a whole server use the plugin, what happens is that the bases, as I said, will be despawned, and then it will be loaded again. So if you just wait for it, as you can see, the changes will of course be saved. One last thing that one might want to go through is that if I've already placed my camping block, for instance, in this case, bedrock, say I have 2 bedrock blocks. If I place it and then I try to place it again, I'll get an error message that I've already have spawned a my camp spawned, and I have to break it before I can place a new block. And as you can see, it is like that. And yeah, that's essentially it. Let's see, was there anything else? Yeah, so if you change this variable from Origo and players already have saved player bases, what happens is if you, for instance, decreases, so instead of 5, it being a 3, and the player spawns their base again, it will, for the first time, it will spawn normally, but when you remove the camping block, not all of the base will be saved, and that's because now the plugin is like, hey, the volume is not 5 by times 5 by 5 anymore. It's 3 times 3 times 3. So I'm only gonna save it from within that volume of just of 3 times 3 times 3. So I don't recommend messing around too much with this variable if players have already made changes, unless you want to increase it. If you increase it, there's no harm. No harm is going to happen if you increase it. But yeah, that's essentially all. I hope this wasn't too bad of a tutorial. I apologize for the bad quality. I'm really tired. Oh shit, I should stop.